While the big brands of the 1980s are the ones that stayed perpetually in our minds and in the media over the years and years, and then now we become adults and we're still collecting them, we do need to give some love to these underrated toy lines that showed up and had a lot of potential and maybe were released in the wrong time. Maybe they came out in a time it was too saturated for the markets. But for those of us who were around during that period of time, they are every bit as special as the big brands that basically lasted throughout the decades. But I could keep rambling, but first thing I'm going to do is welcome everyone to this Sunday edition of the Toy Connections online live stream, or TKO, broadcasting to you whatever time of day, whatever day of week, whatever country, city, or region you happen to be in. Look, we got some people backstage who are very passionate about these toy lines. So first thing I'm going to do is bring in 2 weeks in a row on TKO. You can subscribe to him on Toy Kinda Mood or follow him across other forms of social media. KJ, welcome back to TKO, buddy.
Hello, Ken. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a great time here at TKO, and this subject is very close to the chest. Collected a lot of great groovy toys, or kind of obscure to everyone else. Underrated, doesn't even begin to touch it. So I'm excited about this one.
Awesome. I don't like to ask people to come on 2 weeks in a row because I think I might burn out the guests, but you're sitting there like when I asked you about the two topics, the 90s one and this one, you're like, Ken, put me for both, even if it's 2 weeks in a row. And I'm like, good. Right. And our other guest today is somebody who was on our New Year's Eve live stream, and right up until 2 days ago, I was getting comments about, man, that guy had a lot of great insights on the way we collect toys and everything like that. And he was actually the very first person who asked me to do a collaboration. So while I always give other friends credit for how TKO got started and all that, and how the channels evolved, this was the first person to kind of pull me out of the shyness and out of the weeds and say, hey, Ken, let's do something together. So Adam from Go Figure, welcome back, buddy. 2 out of 3.
I just want to apologize to everybody for pulling Ken out of his shyness.
Yeah. I know that there's some condolences to be had all around and all that, but as they say, you may have created a Frankenstein or may have created a bit of a monster.
It's beauty, and if we could talk about, I love today's topic, Ken, because of all the toy channels out there, and I'm as guilty as anybody else. They really stick around Joe, MOTU, and Transformers, right? That's really where people live, and there is as much, or if not more, great toy lines and content out there than those big three to be had and to be discussed and to be cherished. So I'm pumped about today.
Well, you know what? And the big three of the 80s were obviously like the dominant ones from like whatever, 82 to 89 or whatever. And if it's not those three, it's Star Wars, TMNT, maybe wrestling, superheroes in some way, shape, or form, whether you're talking Kenner Superpowers or Hot Toys or MCU.
Wrestling was kind of a different thing, though. Like, am I wrong in how I interpret that as a kid? Like, there was toys that we played with that were based on movies or TV shows and that, but wrestling was like, it was almost like toys of real people. You know what I mean? It was a whole different culture. And so I always looked at, like, I had wrestling toys and I liked them, but it was like a different thing. You couldn't cross the streams with wrestling as much.
You kind of could, depending on, but it was very like Sergeant. It would be like Sergeant Slaughter.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or like the fridge for his one-off, Mr. T. Like when it crossed, and when it didn't cross, it was out of sight, out of mind. And then you turn on Saturday Night's Main Event because it wasn't a Saturday morning cartoon. It was Saturday Night's Main Event, right? So you're right. And whenever I release a wrestling-related video, and I know people say I get too hot and heavy about the YouTube algorithm all the time, but when I release a wrestling video, it's almost like it confuses the analytics. It's like, what's he doing? Like my latest LJN wrestling history video from last summer, when I released it, like nobody viewed it. It was ranked like the lowest in my last 10. And after the first 48 hours, it spiked to 2,000 views in like a day. And I was like, I'm definitely confusing the algorithm. And I got one already produced coming in a couple of weeks. But it's all about passion. And YouTube, among all my friends, have taught me passion first. Whenever I say to Adam, well, maybe we should do what the algorithm wants, he's like, no, I'm going to do what Adam wants. Yeah, and he's happier for it, right?
I don't bow to robots, Ken.
The problem is I spent my whole life bowing to robots, right? Especially ones that transform.
Right. the algorithm is the Decepticon. That's all I'll say.
The algorithm's a Decepticon. Right. All right. I love it. I love it. Let's say hello to the chat. A bunch of people have jumped in. We got Jordan from Canada here. We got Ramen Toy, whose stuff I'll be talking about for a little bit later on. We got Ozstradamus Toyz, our very good friend. We got Nolan. We got J-Max77, TJC, one of the channel members, Stephen S, Jarhead, figuratively speaking, Rolando Flores, Payne's Toy Samples, Wilhelm, Hobby and Toy and Hobby. I got to get his name right. Very good friend of mine. Jason Fitz. Gosh, we got a whole bunch here. Black Phoenix 77. Did I already say hi to Paint Toy Samples?
Hey,
well, I will
what's
again.
up, man?
Yeah, you can say hi again.
I can say hi again. Boba Hicks, who was on recently as well. Scrolling. A lot of familiar names in here. Skyfall. Already said hi to Ramen Toy, but we said hi twice, a couple times now. Action Figure Rescue. And did I miss anybody? If I missed your name, I apologize. I jinxed myself because when we were Pericles, Dragon Ball Z, I jinxed myself backstage as I usually do, and I'm like, oh, nobody's commented yet. Maybe nobody's. Should we go live? Should we wait another minute? And Adam said, go live. And we'll catch up with the chat. And all of a sudden, bam, 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 bam. And I'm like, okay, again, if I listen to Adam instead of listen to myself, I'm happier for it. It's become a recurring theme in our friendship.
I just want to say, someone made a comment. Action Figure Rescue made a comment that Fisher Price Adventure people are underrated, and I want to say they are underrated, but also they are of my childhood. They were always like the civilians for whatever we were playing, right? Like whatever you were playing with, you always had like the adventure people were never specific characters, but they're always like great background fillers. So you could play G.I. Joe, you could play Captain Power, you could play whatever you want. And you had these civilians that were just there like in the background. And so without knowing it, Fisher Price gave us the greatest backdrop for all our adventures we'd have with other toys.
They'd be good for photography as well, especially with that vintage look.
Oh yeah, no, they're great. They're great. But because Fisher Price is going for like, here's a scuba diving team, like generic scuba diving or generic firemen or whatever it would be. They became like great background civilians and just regulars.
And once again, you start with another like mind-blowing comment, like, "Oh my goodness! If you didn't think of that then, you could think of it now, right?" Because they scale with Joe's, they scale with Star Wars. But apparently, you've got a request here from one of the channel members, so I pulled it up.
Print a bumper grill for June Optimus Prime. Yeah. For sure. If you want one, I'll promo for you. No problem. There
we go. Get a hold of them, and we'll jump into it. Now, the descriptions, hopefully the description's been updated below. You can subscribe to both Black Genghis on Toy Kind of Mood as well as Adam from Go Figure. So, look, before we jumped on, I was reminded, don't call these lesser toy lines. They may be underrated, but they are not lesser to us because, we have been inundated with, like, I know Masters of the Universe was fading a bit and then it spiked back up now, like, with the recent Origins and all that. So it's making a comeback. We can call it the big three again of the 80s. It caught back up. And G.I. Joe did the same thing with Classified. But look, was there, I know, KJ has some slides to share, and I've got some photos from Ramen Toy that I'm going to share, and some photos from my own collection I'm going to share later on. But if we go in a circle here, going clockwise here, was there one of these underrated lines that stood out for you the most as a kid, and then later on as an adult? KJ, what about you?
It had to be Captain Power, which I'll touch on later, because the show just did not talk down to kids, and it was just a weird hybrid where it was too goofy for adults, but with a name like Captain Power, it's hard to get them to be like, you gotta watch Babylon 5, you gotta watch Next Generation, you gotta watch Captain Power. Like, that's not what people were saying back then. But it was also, for a lot of young kids to adult, it was very dire straits. It was almost like the Terminator Future War. Humanity was wiped out. You just had this small band of freedom fighters. They were the last ones standing, so it was like, if you were a horror kid, or you were a sci-fi kid, and you had watched Alien when you weren't supposed to, Predator when you weren't supposed to, or any number of things, then Captain Power was kind of your bag. Still got love for the toys. I still listen to the soundtrack, man, on a weekly basis, if not daily.
Wow, that's awesome. It's awesome to hear. Ooh, Captain Power. I had some of those toys as well, and they could interact with the TV. For those who don't remember,
He was ahead of his time, decades ahead of its time.
Could you imagine if that came out like 10 years later? Like if it came out during the edgy 90s, like the talk we had last week,
Yeah.
I think it would have been at least as popular as Exo Squad, you know, at least.
If it had found a way to sort of link itself with the video games, because you could even buy like animated VHS target practice runs where you had to like bomb Volcania, where you had to hit different targets. It's really was ahead of its time. And it was kind of like the video game. If it was able to be there with Super Nintendo and Genesis, to be there when people were watching more syndicated sci-fi stuff, Space Rangers, Above and Beyond, that kind of thing. And then I think Captain Power probably could have stayed if they had aged up their audience, but still have toys. You know, like we saw toys for Aliens, for other R-rated lines. Hell, even Last Action Hero had a toy line.
Yes, it did.
Yes, I think it was just ahead of its time, and it paid the cost, unfortunately. But I still have a lot of love for Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future.
Last Action Hero could be like alternate costume Terminator T-800, right? Depending on the scale.
If you have the Jack Slater's vehicle, it scales with 6-inch. It does.
Yeah, no, the Last Action Hero figures scale exactly with the Cannuck T2 figures, so you can have a number of more.
That's why I said it.
Cool, right?
Well, Adam, I know this could be a deep topic for you, but like, what were the ones for you then and now?
If I had to pick one, because I could talk about
pick more than one, but sure.
Okay, well, we'll start with if I had to pick one. I think that Sektars is a perfect toy line. It's perfect. I think Coleco gave us way more than they needed to. I think that the play factor with the puppet aspect of it is something that we've never done since, and I don't understand why. Like action figure riding a puppet, just it's the coolest looking toy. I remember as a kid being enamored with it when I got my Spider Axe and the Spider Flyer for Christmas, and just like that was, it came alive. And if you look at the tooling for the figures, like we're MOTU, we have like one essential body style, and over all these figures they had a couple of variations, but every Sektars figure where they could have had a generic torso, it's different. Every figure has a different sculpt, the torso, different legs. There's never any reused parts. And there's these big play sets and accessories. Like each Sektar came with at least 5, if not more, accessories with holsters and guns and whips and shields and swords. Like if you bought 1 or 2 Sektars, you had a whole arsenal of weapons for them to use. And just the world was cool. The show, now I think the downfall with Sektars is we only got a 5-part miniseries and not an actual show. I think if we would have got a full show, a full season of Sektars, I think we would still be talking about them, about all their great waves that came after. That with the combination of Coleco putting their money into the Atom 12 computer, the home computer, all their Cabbage Patch. If you would have said 2 years before they went into business that the Cabbage Patch money would all be gone into a failed computer, I'd be like, well, that's crazy. Just make more Cabbage Patch Kids, right? But so Sektars didn't fail, but the company around them failed.
Because Coleco did that. They did Rambo as well.
Yeah, and they did great. But and how I can tell that I'm not wrong with my love for the Sektars is my wife isn't a toy collector. She grew up with a different childhood than I did, and they didn't have a lot of toys, and for whatever reasons. And so she doesn't get it. She's like, you love this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I love it. I just don't get it. I don't get it. That's good. But we still, go on adventures together, and she'll come on toy pickups and stuff. And when I went to get my first puppet, my first Sektars puppet, when I started redoing the collection, it was a Spider Flyer. I came in the car, and she was like, we drove there, and she geocached us. We geocached around and got it. And when I came to the car, she's like, now, what did you buy? What did you spend our money on? And I put the puppet on my hand, and she saw it come alive as a spider. And she's like, my wife, who's not into toys, is like, that's the coolest toy I've ever seen. And I wish we could have had that for our kids when they were smaller. Like, I wish this existed for our kids.
Little scary maybe, but the playability factor was there.
Kids love bugs.
Okay. Maybe I was a weird kid. So maybe I was a normal kid.
Maybe you were totally a normal kid. But I look at that line and I think, we've seen the prototypes of the second wave that was coming out that we never got, and they were fantastic. They were just shelved and then creator went on to do Boglins because he was like, yeah, puppets exist, and like the Boglins became a huge thing. So why there hasn't been since 1985 an action figure riding a puppet, I do not understand. If you took this concept and made it female warriors riding butterflies, you would have every young girl who likes strong female characters buying this toy line tomorrow. It would be out of the park.
Boglins made a comeback. I think Toink, based out of Illinois, they started carrying Boglins. So it's not too late for Sektars.
No, and the guy who created Boglins is the one who's doing it. Like makes them in his garage or something. Like it's really a homegrown thing. He's like, I'm just going to do this myself. It's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Well, I got a lot to add to that, but first off, patiently waiting here. Boba Hicks, thank you for the super chat. Mentions Manta Force line from 1987, and it's worth a Google if you haven't seen it. See, that's one that I'm not familiar with, but it is, what do you call it? If Boba Hicks says it, I believe it. So it's like what you two say. If you two tell me something, I believe it. Boba Hicks falls into that category because I was one of those people who honed himself into the, and I'm using the air quotes here, the A-list toy lines because that's what I got hit with in media, right? And that's what a lot of my friends were into, right? That's why I never got into Sektars as one example. Oh, there you go. That's neat.
That is pretty cool.
It's got a Starcom type feel to it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the point. So yeah, look. Oh wow. Okay, talk about underrated. See, I don't know that line at all, right? But look, I mean, Sektars I was definitely not into, but like it's a puppet line. Like there's so much intuitive play with that. And to KJ's point with Captain Power, that was kind of, I got into it briefly because it was like a replacement. It fit with my GI Joes, right? Yeah, and I've got a few people here saying that they're just in briefly, so I'll just say a quick hello to them. K-Dog Broadcasting from the Patreon. Always appreciate your support, so thanks for popping in to say hello. Mike Hex has to quickly say hello, and Quip has joined the chat. So, look, I mean, for me, a underrated line was something like M.A.S.K or C.O.P.S, and those lines still had extensive casts, large ensemble casts, and the only reason they fall into the discussion category is because they didn't have a lot of, like, they didn't get a lot of fanfare after the fact. Like, M.A.S.K made a comeback a little bit with G.I. Joe. They got rolled into that shared universe. Sorry, I was going to present a photo here, but I realized I just got to find it first. But, like, when you look at toy lines of the 80s, here, I'm going to try to present the screen. I should have prepped this a little bit better, but
you're doing great, Ken. You're doing great.
I'm doing great. All right. I shall keep repeating that to myself. Let's see here. Did that work or did that not work? Right. I mean, like, this is basically the extent of my C.O.P.S collection plus Berserko, right? Yeah. There's a certain innocence involved with toys in the 80s, right? There's a certain, what do you call it? Like, you look at these and you just think quintessentially 80s. And the fact is, not all of these were accurate to how they were on screen. Like, M.A.S.K and Bowser had a different color scheme. You knew it was them when you picked them off the pegs, because Bowser had Blitz and M.A.S.K, you know, he's got that overall look, but he had a different color scheme. You look at Barricade over there. He didn't wear that mask. He didn't wear that mask when he was on the show. But, like, that was the thing, is that screen accuracy was only part of the it. The innocence of the toy still existed, regardless of whether or not. I'm a little distracted here, but he's, you know, at least he didn't say, you know, I'm going to crush your nuts like he said to me one time when Mega J was here. I was like, what are you going to do now? He's like, I'm going to crush your nuts. And he ran away, and the whole chat just burst out laughing. So anyway, I am trying to talk here. So do you want to add anything? You want to join the panel today? No, you don't throw something. Come take your stuff back. All right, whatever. I'm totally going to step on that on the way out. Yeah. Okay. And then on top of that, just other things that are adding to kind of our 80s fun. I got a few photos here from Ramen Toy, because I know he's trying to fill some of the gaps as far as our 80s fun is concerned. Like, okay, all right, that's enough for now. I gotta talk. Okay. Hold on, I gotta share screens. Okay, that's enough for now. That's enough for now. All right. So like if you're looking at M.A.S.K, for example, right? And you can go to ramentoy.com. This isn't up for pre-order yet, but like there's the item, the elusive item that we did not get back in the 80s, right there. Did I lose audio? Can you still hear me?
No, we did.
No,
Okay.
we got you. Yeah.
Right, and I've heard from Ace that Gloria Baker is going to come with this, because when I did get a Playmobil item that they 3D printed some M.A.S.K Sharks stuff on, that one didn't come with Gloria Baker, so I was a little choked and a little disappointed. Had to source her later, but this one will. But unlike that one where you had to like put the pieces on, this will be a one-touch click where like all the stuff opens up. So I thought that was kind of cool, and I thought that fit with the theme of what we were talking about today. Also, what do we got here? Bravestarr, like the Marshall, like we've not gotten a modern Bravestarr line of figures yet. So getting this would be something that strikes a lot of people's fancy.
Yeah.
I know due to licensing issues, it's got to be called the Marshall, just like the M.A.S.K one's got to be called the Great White and not the Shark, for example. Right. I'd be down for something Bravestarr related.
Oh yeah.
And also he's got this Top Gun. Like when we talk, I mean, definitely not an underrated movie, but not a toy line that comes to mind for everybody. Right. So, you know, one of those things that if you go to ramentoy.com, he's got a whole bunch of these kinds of products. He's already released modern Centurions, modern Silverhawks. So it just happened to fit with the theme of what we're talking about today. So thanks to Ace for enlightening me on some of this stuff. While I knew about some of his product, just getting a little bit of the inside scoop and the inside baseball of what he's talking about. I'll try to, you know what, I'll leave his link in the description below. This way, anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about can oops, what have I done here?
I believe so. I think Mattel still owns Bravestarr. It's not the classic media situation that's going on with Masters of the Universe or anything like that.
They might have been involved in the whole purchase when Hallmark bought it.
Right.
When Hallmark bought all the properties from Mattel, Bravestarr might have been involved in that, if I remember incorrectly. Right.
And we got some new friends in the chat here. Meyer Fun. Gazz has made it for the day.
Man, Gazz right there.
Our man Gazz. Megaforce. Right, Gazz? Yeah. Chasing 80s Toys. Chris has managed to join us. Tidirium.
So DreamWorks owns Bravestarr as well as He-Man. So that means Universal owns Bravestarr as well.
Yeah. Funny thing is, I was looking for the Ramen Toy Centurions review, and Tidirium Hanger's review was the one that popped up in my feed. So, you know, he happened to join us here as well, which is kind of cool. Look, someone mentions Captain Planet as an example for something
that's
that
90s.
could have...
It's time maybe coming.
Oh, that's true. That's true. It is 90s. Considered 90s, right?
Like, I think their theme song is basically step by step from New Kids on the Block. It's essentially exactly the same. Captain Planet, ooh baby, get to your earth.
I love it, KJ.
I think you've nailed it, my friend. Word for word, that's exactly what it is.
That was the theme song, exactly.
Absolutely. And yes, Ace, this stuff's not on the website yet, but we are getting you can follow him on Facebook as well to get some of the updates on some of these, right? Some of the Centurion stuff and Silverhawk stuff and Mega Man stuff is on your website though. So, and I think a lot of people love your rendition there of Captain Planet, New Kids on the Block thing. Now, KJ, did you want to share your slides now?
Yeah, we can go into it. I'll make it nice and breezy. Rock Lords, I think they were cross-branded with GoBots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had these. Thank you, K-Dog. But I had a couple of these as a kid, and I loved it, and I just could not stop transforming them. I transform them back. They were easier to transform than a lot of the G1 Transformers. Like, I have my Ultra Magnus, and he just stayed in robot mode because I couldn't transform it back without breaking it. Yeah. See, I told you.
Now, do you have control of the slides, or do I have to be the one to?
You know what? I think let me try something here. So here's the next slide.
Okay, good.
You see that? All right, yeah. So
just in case I need a bathroom break, which I do. So
if you want to go back to that first slide for a second, though, I just want to comment. They appear to have stolen their logo from the School of Rock or the Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock, yeah.
It's exactly the same.
But it works. It works.
Yep.
So I think in some parts Tonka was behind this, and then maybe Bandai had a couple of these. I could be mistaken. Let's go ahead and take a look. But I definitely had these as a kid. So here they are out of card. And I was just able to go on the internet and grab from different websites. But yeah, they were just a lot of fun. You could put your G.I. Joes against this. Maybe Cobra is like, finally, my rock monsters will destroy the Joes. Like, you let your imagination run nuts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, if you were into rock, so you were like a rock collector as a kid, I mean, these were totally for you. And I don't remember.
I think that was the Venn diagram that Tonka uses. Like, we have rock collectors here. We have kids that like Transformers here. That middle area is right where this is being targeted.
But if you were like a kid before the internet, a kid before video games, before 16-bit video games, before 8-bit video games, you collected rocks. You found bugs, fireflies, right? You just played outside.
Also, we used to go to the toy store with an open mind, be like, "What's cool today?" We wouldn't know. We wouldn't see commercials sometimes. We used to go there and like, "Oh, yeah, Rock Lords. Yeah, I want it." Like, it was just like, what? And I think that leads to why some of these lines maybe didn't have the longevity that they wanted to, is because there was so much to choose from.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, they were ephemeral. They only lasted for so long.
Yeah, because there was 11 different lines at market at the time. You only pick one action figure. Like, well, do I want another Captain Power guy? Do I want a G.I. Joe? Do I want there's so many options that we couldn't support that many lines.
Mm-hmm. By the time that we got to the 90s, and I was like finally like earning my own money from neighborhood chores, leaves and lawns and whatnot, because I had this money that was essentially mine, I had to like really be targeted about what I was going to get. Yeah. So for me in the 90s, it was Power Rangers. I'm not getting anything but Power Rangers. But when you're a little kid, it's kind of like, yeah, your parents see like, oh, you like that? Well, here you go, blah, 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 that kind of stuff, especially when you're a young kid. Yeah, so it's like, it's just this imaginative line, but a lot of times, like Boba Hicks telling us about Manta Force, or like we're seeing online, like we're seeing people talking about Rambo. I think Karate Kid had a toy line. So it's just like
the Karate Kid line, yeah.
So it just really depends on what you grew up with, what was available, what your parents or your relatives were able to give you for birthdays, Christmases, that kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely have a soft spot in my heart. Just even thinking about this subject and going online and like, man, I hope I can like remember what it was called. And boom, there it was. So it just brought back a lot of fun memories. How do I turn off of this?
Oh, do you need to end the slideshow?
How do I make this go away?
I click remove slideshow.
Okay,
cool. That's how it works. I think Adam's gonna get some goodies to show us from the cabinet there. No, thanks for sharing sharing all that with us, KJ. I know I missed a couple minutes of it, but I did see the slides before we came live, so to get a bit of an idea.
Talking about unsung heroes and underrated toys, I've become addicted with restoring Bravestarrs, because you can get like a naked Bravestarr for like a couple bucks, right? Just like no vest, no hat, no gun. And so once I cracked the code of like how to print this stuff and how to design it, I have so many Bravestarrs now with printed vests and hats and guns and blast effects and stuff that my cabinet is runneth over with Bravestarr figures.
Yeah, you were showing us in the private chat there. I'm like, how many Bravestarrs do you need? Like, because now the more I talk to you, the more I get into these lesser known lines. Because like before I met you, did I even think about collecting Visionaries? I don't think I did.
They're not. But
right, you're also sending me my first vintage Thundercats figure.
Yeah, it's ready to go there. I also got a little surprise in the box there for you. I'm not going to tell you about, but there's a little surprise in the package coming, Ken.
Between the Kendar figure, this Lionel you're sending, I'm like it. Like, I'm having fun, right? I mean, you've opened up another world for me in toy collecting, because I was a big 3 snob, plus wrestling, plus Star Wars, plus a few A-list lines. I was like, I'm gonna just enjoy my A-list lines. But like, if you ignored all the A-list lines and just collected the B-list, you would still have a full collection and a full,
awesome toys.
Like a full and a full lineup of cartoons to watch. You know?
Here's the thing: when you ask me how many Bravestarrs do you need, I don't even need one. Like no one needs these. But the fact that I can take a $5 Bravestarr figure and get them shelf ready and maybe make them a little bit more fun, and have it's a joy to go through that process. It's when I see one, I'm like, oh, am I going to leave it there for $5, or am I going to take it home and make him, restore him to his former glory? And the whole thesis of my or I guess the vision statement behind my channel was, repro and fixing toys, and it was based on Bravestarr, because I said how many Bravestarr hats are in existence out there versus how many Bravestarr figures. Mm-hmm. So if we're doing no repairs and no repro, there will be an infinite number of Bravestarrs that will not be display ready or worthy because they're not going to have their hats, because we all lost their hats. So the Bravestarr hat was one of the first things I was like, I'm going to tackle that and figure that out. And once you crack the code, you can bring all these guys back to former glory, and that's to me the joy. That's why I play with my toys now, as I bring them back to glory. So yeah, I don't need any more Bravestarrs, but I will not leave one behind. So if you have a janky Bravestarr, let me know. I'll send you some stuff to get them ready to go again.
For sure. And I mean, like, that's another cartoon I gotta catch up on, right? Like, look, I mean, what was it, a week ago or 2 weeks ago? I was like, I need to watch a Thundercats cartoon. What do? You send me a link in the chat, right?
Yeah, man.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to ecollectibles.ca. Mike, plugging your thing. And what do I get in the mail just the other day? Have I opened up another rabbit hole? Because me, I tend to like getting the vintage, and I tend to like getting the
modern,
the modern version, right? I'm a little slow on getting vintage He-Man because the leg bands drive me a little nuts. But then someone showed a repair using a couple of O-rings and a way that I'm like, oh no, now it's gonna open another. Like, I don't have room, right? Not that it's ever stopped me in the past, but like,
so
that's
actually one of my rules. If I can't display it, I don't buy it.
Okay.
And so that saves me from spending all the mortgage money.
And my rule is, if I like it, I buy it.
That's not a rule, Ken. That's an addiction.
Yeah, my rule is, if I want it, I order it and then cancel it.
I can't remember if it was Payne's toy samples or somebody. I mean, it might have been K-Dog or that said on my Patreon, Ken, we're gonna need it, because I left them a message about, I can't seem to stop myself. They're like, if you want an intervention, we're here, and I'm like, oh boy.
So can I make a respond to a comment here? Ramen Toys just said there appears to be zero QC issues with 80s toys, and I would say that yes and no. In that, yes, they're all play. We love them all, but if it was a quality control issue, then it's become a rare variant now. So like, there's a Bravestarr that has no paint on his boots, which we call like the unpainted boot variant, which is probably a quality control issue. Time has then given us the idea of like, well, now it's a very exclusive variant.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Like my rocket, my Boba Fett, the rocket actually comes out with a spring and all that, and L slot. I don't know what to do with. I don't know what to do with that. Okay, sorry.
Send it to me. I'll fix it.
I also need paint. I also need some paint on my Mad Bubbler prototype. Just okay.
I'll glue it in there for you. It's crazy though, when like the weird toys become the rare ones. So like the Mad Bubbler is like the rarest Thundercat figure, like the prototype or whatever. It doesn't look like a Thundercat toy. It looks like a weird toy that I think would be jarringly out of place in a Thundercats display, but like that's the one.
Didn't it only get like a few seconds of screen time too, or something? I don't think it did.
But sometimes those are the best ones. I think we're about to get the Frogmonger. It's totally new to the Origins line. And it was just in background that Axel Jimenez kept putting in, and we're like, we got to get that. Well, here it is.
I think it was a sticker on the original Castle Grayskull, wasn't it, or something like that?
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure. I think that's what it was. I think
that sounds right. But it's just like this romanticization of everything having to do with our favorite lines and our favorite world. So we want that one in the background. I want that Honolulu action figure that they haven't made yet for the Joes. Right? Put it on the back of Optimus Prime. Help! Don't worry, I'll get you. I'm Roadblock. Whatever. So we just want that world filled out even more. Mm-hmm. That's what Star Wars did. How many
the last 17.
Right.
Oh yeah, and Ponda Baba.
Yeah, just like they just made figures out of everything. So
all he did was get his arm cut off, and anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Or was that Ponda Baba? Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Walrus Man. Anyway.
Walrus. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just yeah. Brain's not fully working this morning. Well, it's never fully working, but it's a little below suboptimal.
And like I say, you brought C.O.P.S, Ken. I think C.O.P.S is a great a great 80s line. Like I loved it. Highway to me is like the best figure in that line. You put him with the blue streak, you're off to the races. I think though, in hindsight being 2020, if they would have released it as a G.I. Joe subgroup, just like G.I. Joe, C.O.P.S, and they were like the same scale as G.I. Joe, I think they would be as like the C.O.P.S name would be as like remembered as G.I. Joe right now.
And I was always hoping that they would just roll it into the line, like M.A.S.K was briefly rolled in with Matt Tracker.
Yeah. Because
so
the G.I. Joe O-ring figures, being as a kid, you had G.I. Joes, you could throw stuff in there that was one-off, and they were just part of your Joes. Like Captain Power could just be a Space Joe, right? Robotech figures could just be G.I. Joe. You put them in the bottom, they were just they seamlessly transitioned. And
but so they weren't branded that way, right? Whereas like the Fridge is technically a one-off figure, but he was branded in there. We just
saw the O-ring construction. We're like, oh, that's a G.I. Joe. Like this is
how many of your core figures ended up in G.I. Joe?
Right. And so it was that allowed some of those crossovers to kind of play with that figure scale. But the 80s thing is also like scale. And now, I'm not a modern collector, and some of the trends kind of bother me a little bit in modern collecting. But in the 80s, we didn't think about toy companies didn't seem to think scale mattered. So like when Bravestarr came out, like he couldn't play with anybody. Like there's no you couldn't scale. Like even Centurions, which was a big figure, wasn't the same as this. So if you wanted to have Bravestarr interact with somebody, it had to be in the Bravestarr line, right? Even like Thundercats and MOTU, people in hindsight are like, if they made them this scale, yeah, those, right? If you made,
I was gonna say maybe Bravestarr could fight this guy.
Right. Well, if you made Thundercats the same scale exactly as Masters of the Universe, probably would have done better. But they were like, no, we're gonna do our own thing. We're gonna do
Super Sevens classics. I know you said there's some modern trends that we don't like, and there's some trends I don't like either.
Right.
Like,
I'm just saying, like,
that why is Snarf $80 Canadian or 60 US or whatever? Like, anyway.
Because people will pay it, but I won't get into that right now.
Yeah. But all that to say is, like, I think we've lost some of the charm of these like one-off lines that were distinctly their own. Right? Like we look at the Sektars. Nothing else was Sektars in that scale. Nothing was like that, and it was incredible.
That's partly. Sorry, go ahead.
But I was gonna say even like the Superpowers line, which ran for 2.5 years and is like highly collectible, very fondly remembered. It was great. It was only up for 2.5 years and it was gone. Like it didn't. It succeeded for a little bit, but it didn't last long. And it is a.
You're right.
Line.
We think in our minds that it succeeded because superheroes perpetuated and there was a lead up to it. But I think that was based on the Super Friends cartoon mostly, right?
Yeah, I think it was like
or hybrid
on that. I think they released a Superpowers line and then they changed the show to reflect the line more. It was I don't think it was a direct 1-to-1. But it was just when DC Comics, they wanted to have heroes come out, right? So they needed something other than Star Wars. And so, it's in that line is so good. Like it's a perfect line. There's nothing wrong with that line. People say that the articulation and the actions, no, you could move their arms without moving their legs. It was great.
I was so into those when I was 3 or 4 years old. Like those were some of the first Superpowers, and MOTU were the figures I got into before Transformers, if you could believe. So
yeah, and I wouldn't. There's a number of reasons why they said that the line failed, and weird characters and like over shipping. All that to say is like that was a perfect toy line, but there was so much to choose from. It fell by the wayside.
Fair enough. And Jabbar Robbins, because you've asked us a few times in the chat, I go real Ghostbusters over Filmation. Oh no, that's the wrong comment.
How about the Slimer spinoff? Oh
no, it said Filmations are real. That's the I go real Ghostbusters. But
nobody turned on Filmation's Ghostbusters and was like, oh, this is the show I want to watch.
No, well, Filmation Ghostbusters was always fooled you, right? Like you looked at the TV guide, or you're like, "Hey, Ghostbusters!"
That happened to me with the TV guide. Oh my goodness, so many times.
Fooled again.
Yeah. To your point, what was I gonna say? Oh goodness, I lost my train of thought a little bit. Oh, whatever. It doesn't matter. It'll come back when it comes back. No, that's gonna bug me now, but whatever. No, that was it. With the QC and the charm and the innocence of the 80s. If look, I pulled up that C.O.P.S photo with Mace and Bowser not being screen accurate. If those figures came out in the modern line and they were not screen accurate, us fans would be, or fans in general would be all over it. Right. I mean, maybe because it's accurate to the original to the original toy, it's okay. But we're so like picky about screen accuracy or whatnot that they wouldn't get away with that in this day and age. Like if a new IP came out and it was a different color scheme
from Book of Boba Fett, like it's like one of their worst releases. It's like here's this fan favorite character in a retooled Chewbacca figure release.
Yeah, and everybody jumped down its throat on it.
Well, and that's why, you know, I have a problem with modern because it tends to, like, take Marvel Legends for instance, right? So the Marvel Legends line, as you know it now, started with the one Spider-Man figure, which was the Spider-Man Classics figure that came out in 2001, I think. The Spider-Man Classics line. And it was like 32 points of articulation. It was like, this is the ultimate Spider-Man that you'll ever need. It's the best figure ever in the world. And I remember my buddy Richard and I at college went out like after class and we're like, we're going to go see if we can buy this. We bought the Spider-Man figure. Came home. We're like, and I wasn't even a Marvel guy. I was like, this is incredible. Like, look at this guy go. Every subsequent Spider-Man that's come out since then, like, well, you got to buy another one. You got to buy another one. It's always searching for like this ideal Spider-Man. Whereas when we had the Secret Wars or the Toy Biz Spider-Man when we were kids, that was Spider-Man. It was like there were no options. It was like, if you wanted Spider-Man, this is what you got. And you got it and you defended it. You're like, this is Spider-Man. And I don't need anybody. I know he's got karate chop hands, this with suction cups on them. Doesn't matter. This is Spider-Man, and I have the toy.
There was no choice unless you wanted to get the Mego one from a decade earlier, right?
Right, but
and even that was completely different construction.
But what kid in 84, 85 knew there was a Mego figure in 74?
I didn't. I found out about Mego in the 2010s, right?
You know, you found it at yard sales and thought you found a treasure from Indiana Jones or something.
That's what it felt like.
But we would defend these, you know, and I see lots of guys in the MOTU chats are like, oh, you know, things like, oh, it always bothered me he had flesh-colored armbands on his arm. Like, no, it didn't. It was just He-Man, and you bought it and you loved it because it was He-Man. There was no problems because it just was. And now we have this idea of I want to get the ultimate version, I want to get the very best version, which causes us to keep buying. When I think the best versions of all these toys were the ones that came out in the 80s.
Well, yeah, because now it's all about pickiness, accuracy, extra accessories, paint, detailing. Whereas back then was about innocence, fun, let's go. Playground, battlefield, let's go. And
Ramen Toys is in the chat. And so I think what he's doing is great. And I've seen some of it. I've seen the Centurions. I've held them in my hands. They're great quality. And, you know, you're following your passion. And I love that. And I say, keep doing it. However, for me, in my mind, the Marshall figure you're coming out with looks incredible. It's got lots of accessories. It's going to be very articulate, very detailed, highly articulated. But in my mind, this is Bravestarr. And any deviation, better or worse, more articulation, less articulation, more detail, less detail, moves the needle away from what Bravestarr is. So, right, this to me will always be Bravestarr, no matter what other ones come out. And now if someone doesn't have a Bravestarr, or they're new to it, or they want one to fit in with their collection, like Ramen Toys seems to be the way to go, and that seems like a great idea. And it seems to be made with passion, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, you know, I would love to see a company like Ramen Toys do something 100% unique, do something new, come up with
like an original IP,
like an original line.
Now, the way Ace is set up,
make it 80s style, but just like be creative, because that's what we remember about loving the 80s. Whether it's, you know, Rock Lords or Bravestarr or Sektars or Bionic Six or whatever, Captain Power, these guys were trying to do something new and not just recycling things. And out of all of those ideas, awesome things came. And I feel like we're in an era of recycling, and we're not flexing our creativity, we're flexing our refinement.
And, you know, he gets your point, which is great. And one thing that I think that as Ace being the guy who owns Ramen Toy there, as his operation grows, I could see somebody coming to him with an original IP idea and saying, you know, could we partner up with your resources and all that? I mean, I'm not throwing business ideas out there for Ace, but I'm saying that somebody could come to him and say, look, you've got resources, you've got design, you've got skill, you've got all this. Can we work on something? I could see somebody coming up to him and doing that. And it might be a mishmash of ideas that harkens back to 2 or 3 other properties that we know. and then all of a sudden something comes up. Like in a few years' time, this could come up. And I will bring Ace on the show at some point to talk about either toy making or filling the gaps or expanding the range of, as I always call it, expanding the range of toys. Like I'm all over his M.A.S.K shark. Like I'm like, that's the one that like is gonna blow my mind. And depending on the scale, I should have asked him this, and I should have probably followed his Facebook feed. But like, if the scale of his Bravestarr figure fits with, like, because the MOTU classics are a certain scale, they'll fit with the Thundercats scale of figures. They'll fit with my wrestling figures if I choose to cross those over, even though we established earlier they're a little bit different. If that 6.5, almost 7-inch scale works with the Bravestarr stuff, it would be tempting just to get it in there, right? And it might scale with some of the NECA stuff. Like I'm debating on getting that NECA Marty McFly, which is about 10 minutes away at Toys R Us right now. I'll be there later today. I'll see if I pick it up or not. And he just said Marshall is classified size, so it kind of fits in scale. So it'll be 6-inch. It'll be Marvel Legends scale, which works too. Like Marvel Legends Black Series GI Joe classified scale. That might even be a better scale than the slightly taller
McFarlane
scale.
Masterverse.
McFarlane's Masterverse scale. Right. And those figures, if you kneel them down and pose them a certain way, like I used to get my Diamond Select Marvel stuff because they didn't have certain characters in Legends, and I used to pose them together. And if they crouch a certain way, they could make a battle scene. So it works.
There are a lot of crouched WWE slaughters out there from last year.
But you know, Slaughter is a bit different because he could be he's supposed to be a bit bigger, but I see your point though. Right. I'm actually just working on a video comparison right now between the Hasbro classified one and the WWE Ultimate Edition Slaughters.
Cool.
So you know, anyway, yeah. So was there a toy line that you wish you could get into now that you didn't get into back then? Let's go back to you, KJ.
Well, you know, when I was a kid, I was a lot of window shopping. I was glad to have the toys that I did. I couldn't get every toy in the world, so there was definitely a toy line that I wish I was able to get into at the moment. And that if I had the discretionary funds, just pick up those vintage and have those in my collection right now. So yeah, we can go ahead and get into it. Here's the next group of slides. One of my favorite shows as a kid was Bionic Six. Now, this was created by Ron Friedman. Great theme song. I know you're already singing it in your heads.
We need the new kids rendition.
Adam, to go to your point about like a creative IP not recycling, this show was actually intended to be a sequel to The $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman. So this was supposed to be like the Austin family, and then early on it changed into something else. But I loved the show. I loved the colors. I loved how dynamic it was. And I believe the person behind Golgo 13 was one of the visual directors of Bionic Six. So this was really like that Americanized anime that we had seen. Toy Studio had done the G.I. Joe show, Transformers, before it went on to different animation studios. But now, you know, you could go onto eBay and you set aside some money. If I wanted to, I could get a Bionic Six on card and be like, I get why people collect vintage. I get why people want to, you know, approximate that time machine and do that. And you still have customs. There are some great customs out there of Bionic Six, whether it's 3 3/4 or 6-inch customs. So there's some really cool stuff. I think when it comes to what toy lines were doing back in the day, it was just, we had this world where you had these loosening restrictions on advertising to kids, you know, and like, yeah, you could call it a brainwashing thing, you can call it whatever. But the point is that these toys were great. And if they weren't, we wouldn't have bothered with them. So I wish I had gotten some of those accessories, those play sets. I wish I had gotten those characters. I love the show, and my collection does not reflect my love of that show at all, just because I didn't have that stuff. But that doesn't mean I love it any less. And one of these days, yeah, I would definitely love to try to grab some of those Bionic Six. Shout out very quickly to M.A.S.K. I still have this. I have this in my old toy box. I'm at my dad's house, so I still actually have access to some of my old stuff. And it's pretty great, you know. So if you you're just now learning about M.A.S.K, learning about that G.I. Joe Transformers connection to M.A.S.K, go online, see if you can pick up some of this stuff and like just have this artifact from yesteryear. Some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
100%. And on the topic of M.A.S.K, like I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, was like it had 4 years worth of toys. Sorry, did you want to share something else?
No.
KJ, yeah. The reason it's underrated is it didn't last, even though it had all the potential in the world. Like all the elements were in there. It had
Great
the Transformers.
Song,
yes.
Great toys, great characters. Yeah.
Yes, it had the G.I. Joe feel to it with the strike team. It had the Transformers aspect to it. So I was always wondering how that did not perpetuate to modern times. And I think it just came at a flooded market time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it came at a flooded market time, and there also wasn't like a standard figure, right? Like everything was almost a birthday item. Aside from like the Condor or the Piranha, like the little motorbikes, if you went in there, everything was like a bigger box. And there wasn't like a G.I. Joe where for $3 you could get a G.I. Joe and get your fix. Everything was like a bigger
person. True. That's true. And all the spring action and everything. Now, Adam, I know you pretty much got into every many, if not all of these lesser known lines. Was there anything else that you're like now as an adult you're like, oh, now I want to get into Sky Commanders or something like that? Or
once I had the Henry Cavill Superman figure revelation, where I was like, I'm out, modern toys, I'm out, I'm vintage only, and because the idea of like, or the reality that all my toys I want to have like a restoration story behind them, I'm able to buy specifically vintage toys that I had as a kid or lines that I had as a kid, and not paying top dollar for them because I'm getting ones that I'm going to restore. And I could have probably bought one, complete Bravestarr with all of the stuff, as opposed to have like 11 that have been all restored at some different level, right? And so yeah, luckily I have at least one representation from all of the lines that I love, right? I even got a little Sky Commander in a couple of shelves here. So there's always like a little nod to the ones I love. I'm still looking for pieces and odds and ends that fix there, but I've really been again freed from the gotta have the new stuff coming out where I can just enjoy what I have. And when something comes along, I'm like, oh, I'll pick that up. And it's not like a weekly drain or a monthly drain of budget. It's just like, yeah, this is what I love to do. And it also means every piece of my collection has like a vintage, nostalgic, like very tactical memory that I have. So I'm really happy with where I'm at with my collection. There's nothing that I'm like, oh, if I could just get into that, it'd be a lot of fun. I've gotten to a place of contentment and and joy when something does come across my path.
You have more self-control than I do, right? Because when I get introduced to something I didn't get into as a kid, my current theme song in life is I want it all. I want it all. Okay, we can't play too much of it, otherwise the stream will all of a sudden crash and we'll be talking to ourselves on here. But that's sorry. I saw Bohemian Rhapsody the movie twice in the last couple of months because I just liked it that much, and I know that song wasn't featured in there, but I started looking up old Queen stuff, and when I was reintroduced myself to that song, I'm like, that is my adult anthem right now. Because
right, can I tell you a secret? Can I tell you a secret? You'll never have it all. I never will.
I never will. But can I have it all in my own mind? Probably no, because my mind will keep expanding on things, right? Like when you met me, 2 years ago, Adam, I was so laser focused on Transformers, wrestling, and G.I. Joe. There was nothing else in the world there. And I dabbled a little bit here and there, but I never stopped to really watch the cartoon. Then all of a sudden it was, I got to watch all the Visionaries cartoons. I loved them so much, I watched them again, right? Yeah. Then I went and tracked down the Thundercats cartoon, thanks to you, right? Then I'm talking to KJ about these lines. I'm talking to everyone in the chat about these lines. I don't know, I asked both of you the question, but I don't even know what, if someone was to ask me, what line do I want to get into, that I didn't get into as a kid. And I'm like, how many directions do you want me to go? And how spread thin can I be? And how much storage space do I have? And how many funds can I allocate?
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's a difference too. We need, and you know, I'm not going to get too preachy, but we need to be very careful or very aware that we can cross the line between I want to get the toys that I want to I want to acquire all the things, right? Where I just like I need to buy. We get addicted on like buying something. Where it's like, well, now I need to get something. I need to fill this need. Whereas if you know, I'm like one of my rules is that if I collect a toy line, it has to be at least I had to have one of them when I was a kid, right? So if I had one Bionic Six, well, then it's fair game. I can go into that line and we'll do that. And so it keeps me limited to what I tactically felt as a kid, and so that keeps me grounded. But if you're not like, and I used to be there, like when it comes to Superman and DC, like because I love superpowers so much, I was buying everything, every DC Direct figure that came out, every Mattel figure that came out. I was just hitting it, and I was like, gotta get it. And I realized like, I'm getting zero joy out of this because it's like I go, I spend big money, and then I come home and it's not superpowers as much as I want it to be better than superpowers. It's not in my own mind, regardless of articulation and sculpt and all the rest. It's not hitting that niche. So yeah, I just, you know, we need to be very careful that we don't get caught up in like buying things just for the sake of buying them or having them, but really focusing on what brings us joy, and you know, and stick there, because that's where we're not going to get happiness out of buying things, or that's a myth. Right. You can't. But you know, for me, in this YouTube world, I enjoy meeting people that are like-minded and making friendships more than I like the toys. I have a few buddies here, Taverko and Dave, that are local that I go on toy hunts with.
Yep,
I much more prefer going on a toy hunt with a buddy than the toy I bring home from it, right? Yeah. So we need to be seeking relationship, not money, not stuff. But yeah, that's my sermon for
No, that's totally okay. Right. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead. Were you gonna say, KJ?
No, that's all. I totally agree with that. I'm a toy hunter myself, and it's always more fun with friends.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I was trying to vent to some of my friends earlier. Like, I'm losing self-control a little bit here. Like, I have not learned to enjoy a toy from afar. You know, even if I sold it a number of years ago, like sold a Marvel Legends Sentinel, Build-A-Figure Sentinel a number of years ago, I've reacquired some, I've resold them again, and I want to reacquire it again. It just keeps happening over and over again. I don't know why that's the case. It's almost like it's a weird addiction.
Well, there's the 4 stages of hobbies, right? And so
denial, addiction,
no,
regret.
Let's say I'm gonna get into, I don't know, let's pick a hobby, bowling. Say that's gonna be my new passion in life. This first stage is just like, I want to go bowling. I just want to go do it. I want to just make it be part of it. So that's stage 1. You go and you do it. You're like, oh, that's great. And then you're like, I really, really want to be excellent at it. I want to have some kind of accomplishment. I want to do good at this. And so then you work towards that. And then your second stage is like, you become excellent at that. And then your third stage is like, I want to see somebody else enjoy this as much as I do. Right. And so you bring a friend along, or you introduce someone to it. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, here we are. Now I'm enjoying it with somebody. I see that joy going into somebody else. And the 4th stage is where you're just content and you just enjoy it for what it is, with no ambitions in it. I just love it. One of the coolest things was we went to a toy show, my buddy Taverko and I, a couple months ago, and we set up a table, and I had made some mask stands for like flying cars and stuff that I printed up, and we had those out there. And we've set up our table and it looked real nice. And neither of us really did super well at the show selling wise. I sold some stuff and he sold some stuff, but we had the best day just hanging out, regardless of what we bought or what we sold. And we don't see enough of that. And I don't think people in this particular hobby have got to that 4th stage yet. We're just happy being in it. I'm just happy in my toy room, hanging out with people that also love toys. There's this, like, I want to acquire. There's this acquisition that comes in and kind of taints the joy we can get from just having a collection or being involved in the hobby with others.
And the acquisition, sometimes you get it and you put it on your shelf, you forget, and you go, what's next? Like, that's part of the reason I created the channel, is because I wanted to like go back and appreciate the stuff I own. Now it's also opened up a second door where I'm like, oh, I want to acquire more, so I'm still trying to balance the two.
Yeah,
and so
there is like we do collect, we're collectors, so there is the idea that you want to add things to a collection. I'm not saying you should stop right now, but when your driving force is like, what's next, and
it's hard to get into that. Yeah,
it's hard.
And since Mega J's in the chat, I just wanted to share a thing that because Adam made this yesterday. So if I haven't had a chance to introduce Adam to Mega J yet, since you're both Canadian and you're both in Ontario, I figured I may as well share this this little meme that Adam did here, and I just love the fact that he made me Hitman and made Mega J the Anvil. I just love that I get to be the GOAT and he gets to be the GOAT's tag team partner.
I love that.
I already told Mega J he can join us. He can join us if he wants. But I just thought that this was appropriate, hilarious, and amazingly awesome. And the timing on it too, like we finished the stream the night before, and the next day I'm grocery shopping. I see this in the chat group, and I'm like, hold on, I gotta stop and share this everywhere right now. My kid's sitting there tugging on my sleeve. I'm like, nope, let social media be important for these next 2 minutes, buddy. So
that's right.
Was that?
I'm happy you enjoyed it.
Oh, I did so much. And Ryan Sweeney makes a good point here. It's not about the toys collect; it's the memories you make that is what you need to focus on. And he's absolutely the same way as you. When he customizes the figure, if he sees somebody get more joy out of it, magically it's in the mail to one of his friends. Ryan's really good at that, just like you are, Adam. So
yeah, no, if you can make somebody else's day, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
during that whole classified series fiasco in 2020, all I did was hunt down figs and I sent them to friends retail and shipping. It was like, toy hunter's honor, basically. But it was
absolutely.
Yeah.
It was actually, when you there's very loud people in our community that aren't the best. I'm not in that, whatever. But there's lots of good, genuine people in this community, and when they step up to the plate, it's awesome. I made a post a couple years ago. My son and I, right when stores opened back up in Canada, he was like, "Oh, let's go check out Walmart and let's go to the toy aisle and check things out." And so he's transitioning from being a person that plays with toys into a toy collector. So he has a detail in his room now, and he's there. But this was a few years ago, and there was a couple of adult toy collectors that were in the aisle as new cases were coming out, and they were just like guarding. They were so, it was like rabid dogs, like, oh. And my son was so uncomfortable because of like the posturing. He's like, let's just go, Dad. I don't want to be here anymore. So I commented on I said, like, hey, like, this happened today as a toy collecting community. Let's remember that, like, when you see a kid in a toy aisle, give them preference because they're the future of this hobby. We need to have kids that love toys, because we're a lot of parents are just saying it's easier to give them a screen than a toy, right? And not getting the floor and playing with them. And so I just posted that, not just saying like, hey, just be aware, like this could happen. And then magically in the mail, a bunch of guys sent my son like classified stuff and MOTU stuff, and they're like, "Oh, so sorry to hear." And so they gifted him with a bunch of stuff, which was great. And when you see that kind of thing, like that is that third stage where you want to see somebody else enjoying the hobby.
Yes, and especially if you pass it on to the next generation, because one of the things that we often talk about is, are we going to be able to pass this on? Are we going to successfully see these franchises perpetuate a little bit longer or a lot longer? Right. I mean,
that's why I say, like, we need new franchises, because our kids are drowning in our nostalgia right now and they have none of their own.
When in the 80s, we were dealing with a lot of 50s nostalgia. So you had people going back to like doo-wop and Motown days, or you had Back to the Future is one big nostalgia play. If you think about it. Speaking of which, I sent some toys to my friends. There's their son playing with the Playmobil DeLorean right there.
And so dressed like Doc Brown a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So it all depends. There's still Paw Patrol, there's still Bluey, there's still all sorts of things.
PJ Masks, exactly. Peppa Pig.
So this sort of thing takes time. G.I. Joe was cyclical. There was the Big Jim days, Adventure Team, then Real American Hero, and then this and then that and that kind of stuff.
Our parents' generation, was it our parents' generation, or maybe like your older cousin's generation, or your young uncle's generation before us that was into the 60s G.I. Joe, right? And those are great figures, right? And then they changed, reinvented in Real American Hero. Are we going to see another reinvention, or are we just going to see a rehash of Real American Hero appealing to our age? What I'd love to see is an underdog franchise like the ones we talked about earlier, like a Captain Power or a Sektars or a Bravestarr, right? Or a C.O.P.S, whatever, come back, Visionaries, whatever, M.A.S.K. And that becomes the one that grips the next generation. That would be the most heartwarming thing.
I would love to see Rick and the Meteor Men, just some out of the window idea, and then just take over. Just give us something new, because like we'll support it because we want to see our kids playing toys, right?
We do, but like things are getting more age appropriate now. Like when I look at Paw Patrol, it has some of those themes, some of those enforcement themes, but there's like literally no violence, and you couldn't picture those characters being violent in any way, shape, or form.
Paw Patrol is a junior. Like we
That's true.
When we were playing with MOTU and G.I. Joe, we were beyond the Paw Patrol of our generation, right?
Yeah, well, whatever that was.
Yeah.
What was it?
It was probably like Romper Room and Polka Dot Door, Today's Special, all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Thomas and the Tank Engine. That kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Thomas Train.
Yeah. So anyway, I just love the idea of new properties.
Yeah, I mean, like, and K-Dog Broadcasting brings up a good point here, is that Action Force has, it's done a little bit of an offshoot there, as well as one example of something. I mean,
Action Force is for us, right? That's not a line that our kids are going to get into.
Yeah, but Palatoy Action Force still has a lot of love overseas. Like it wasn't Yo Joe, it was Full Force, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, but you can't go to a store and buy Action Force. Like, you can't go and buy Valaverse at a store. Our kids aren't going to discover.
No, it's almost all online.
Yeah, it's all specialty retail right now. I mean, maybe you can in a few years, because NECA started showing up in places like GameStop, and we're finding it at Toys R Us in Canada here. Like I said, there's a Back to the Future Marty McFly in 1985 version. I'm like, until I watched Jay Bartlett's review of it last night, which had already been up for over a year, I'm like, I think I might pick that up, right? So, but again, it's a nostalgia play, right? So,
Paw Patrol just these muscles and some weapons. Jordan from Canada says,
"Yeah, Jordan's always got some good comments in the chat here, right?"
It's fantastic.
Rubble on the double, Chase is on the case. Should we keep going? No. Yeah. I mean,
again, it's like there is so much creativity. So when you get things like Bravestarr, you get things like Starcom, and they're like, we're going to make
Starcom, another one.
Megas on the feet. Like, you're just like, I'm in. It took so little for us to get into a toy line as a kid. You're like, tell me the premise, I buy it. Like, they're half cat, half people. I'm in. I'll watch it. No problem. They got a sword.
Yeah.
Extreme Paw Patrol.
But angry. Look at Avatars. Currently, the new Avatar is like the biggest film from last year, and it takes that level of success to launch a new toy line.
But even Avatar, like they didn't really release a toy line for kids. They released collector stuff.
It's kind of an adult collector,
and some Lego sets. But there's no like big Avatar, like if they had some big blue people in the aisles of the store, and like kids would be.
There's no Avatar plushies. Yeah, you're right. Like maybe if you go to Disneyland, they may have some stuff, or Disney World, they may have some stuff.
Right, but I think toy companies, because we're skewing that, the adult collectors where these things are and where people are buying, not all, but that's what we're being perceived, is that they're not taking a chance on like a new IP for a kid. And then the first Avatar movie did try that, but this wasn't rollouts like there used to be. It's always small. You got to look for it. You got to be looking for it. It's not, you're never bombarded with like, whoa, GoBots, what's this? I should buy it.
Well, it's the context of having laptops, having smartphones, having social media, essentially. Like if I go visit my friends, their kids don't have toys, but they do have screen time. They have like a limited window that they get to use the gadgets, and then they put the gadgets back in the basket because that's where the family keeps that stuff. So like families have to, it takes so much time and effort to navigate how you're going to raise kids now in 2023 with all these gadgets and electronics.
I've been a proponent of like, if you want to raise a toy kid, get on the floor and play with them.
Yeah.
Right. And we've always done that with our kids, and they're preteens and teenagers now, so they have their devices and whatnot. but there's still an element of play there, and they still have fun memories of playing, as opposed to like, here's your screen, just be quiet.
Right. Yeah.
But, no, it's great. And like I say, it's always fun to see the lines where you're like, oh, I do remember those. And even us in the collecting world, when you see like those lines for such a small amount of time, right? So Bionic Six was one for me that I was like, oh yeah, Bionic Six. I remember I had some of those that were metal when they were heavy, and it was great. So I actually just picked up yesterday the two main characters, the male and female lead.
Okay, cool.
So I was able to get those, and I was like, that's great. Put them on the shelf. And so that it's just, we're never gonna have the connection to modern stuff that we do to the stuff from our childhood. It's just it reigns supreme in our nostalgia, in my mind, anyways.
Yeah. But it's fun to watch kids discover new stuff. It'll be Minecraft. There'll be Roblox, right? It'll be that kind of stuff. The Fortnite figures, like they're just crazy, zany figures. Like that's how you're gonna reach out to the kids. I go to Dave and Buster's, and our arcade pizza place we have, and like they'll have arcade cabinets of the phone games. So it'll be Fruit Ninja, but an arcade. It'll be Temple Run, but the arcade, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what did we conclude in this stream, that these toy lines are better than the than the big lines?
It was a really, we can say this, that in the 80s there was this barrage of just like they threw everything in, everything got a chance. Every decent idea got a chance. And some thrived and some didn't. But there were so many circumstances behind what thrived and what didn't. Doesn't discount how awesome 90% of them were. Like there was some duds, and we can get into it. Like I have no desire as a kid or as an adult collector. Like Dino Riders did nothing for me. So like, I don't really need Dino Riders in my, Food Fighters didn't really come onto my, radar at all. But the stuff that did hit, it hit with us, so that we today, 40 years later, we're still holding on to it because it was that awesome. And whether people love them or not, we did, and we're holding on to that, vicious fever.
There needs to be room for more IPs, more ideas, right? More toy lines. And the second part of that, there needs to be room for kid play. So Lightyear underperforming how it did hurts my heart. I watched the movie. It was this dark claustrophobic thing when it needed to be this bright kaleidoscope, like the syndicated show was.
And the toy line, they really went vintage style with like vehicles and figures. Like they really were like kind of a cool toy line that just didn't hit because the movie was this flop, right?
Yeah. Right. So it's a hard needle to thread. When it happens, it's awesome. I remember when Teletubbies was a big deal when I was in college. I'm like, man, this is weird and bizarre, but the kids love it. Everyone loves it. It's giving me the creeps. I'm going to back off, but I'm glad the love was there. Right. This is one example. So there has to be room for trying out different things coming back. Battlestar Galactica as a purely adult collectible. The remake was great. People have love for the vintage aesthetics, and then they were really savvy about updating it. You can't really go to the toy store to get those figures. Rest in peace to Eagle Moss, but for a long time, like you could go and get some of that stuff.
Yeah.
BSG, the 2000s BSG reimagination is just one of the. I wish we could have gotten some toys that, like, I know they made toys for it, but like, did they stick around to the same level?
It's just hard. Who's gonna be like, hey, we're Mattel, we love the new Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, let's make some toys. Let's get some kids to watch. I mean, goodness, the first 10 minutes.
Hey, Ramen Toy, you still around?
When the adult collector lines, like BSG was an adult collectible toy line when it came out, right? The ones that came out. And they released waves weird. We talked about this on Mo Tuesday with Zazel and Phil.
Yeah.
And that, now they're like, okay, so we're going to release 4 figures for the first wave. We're going to have 1 main character, 1 secondary character, maybe 1 like weird variant, and like a background character, so that we have figures left for the next wave. And they plan these rollouts. Whereas when we were kids, like MOTU came out and they're like, here's our 8 best. Get them all. And we need 8 more. Let's make our next 8 best. Like everything was swinging for the fences, as opposed to playing it safe and saying, okay, we have 13 figure characters in the show. we're going to release 2 that they want right now, and so that we get into this whole like it's a ritual of buying toy lines and waiting for the best characters to come out. We saw that with like the rollout of the Indiana Jones stuff on a Hasbro Pulse the other day.
Oh yes,
it's not how I would have rolled out Indiana Jones, but it's fine. That's what they're going to do. But when we were kids, they were like, here's our A squad. So, when Bravestarr was only out for one wave of toys, we got every character we needed from Bravestarr in that one wave.
You have the core essentials, yeah.
Yes, right. And a lot of people would say that Tex Hex, especially that toy, was as evil as, some of the icons like the Skeletors of the world. And
Tex Hex is dynamite.
I know. Like, and I got rid of some Bravestarr toys at a toy show a number of years ago before I learned to care a little bit about it, right? And I was like, well, it's not really up my wheelhouse. And then suddenly the footprint of your wheelhouse gets a little bit more, and all of a sudden now it kind of fits,
Just the other week, I picked up a 3030 finally. He's so hard to find, and he's so expensive. But I found a real broke down one for $20. So that's gonna be the next thing, is to breathe some life into 3030.
30. Got some stomping to do, right? So yeah. Ryan makes a good point here. There's not as many toy companies as there used to be. Hasbro, Mattel buying up the competition. You're right. Like there was a time when we had Kenner, we had Mego, we had Coleco. How many other companies out there? Now everything's about, you kind of got Lego's doing its own thing, but I think it goes like Hasbro, Mattel. I've heard that Jazzwares has kind of started to peak a little bit, right? I think they're next.
They have, yeah.
They have, but they're also doing some Fortnite stuff. They're doing Halo, so we'll see what other properties they can get, right? And then Spin Master's kind of doing its own like kiddie, like really really kiddie stuff. And then after that, I think somewhere next,
Spin Masters knocked it out of the park with their DC superhero line, with the 3 3/4 inch DC superhero line. It is as close to a Superpowers reissue as I've ever seen. Way better than the McFarlane ones. That's nonsense.
I was about to bring up McFarlane next, like, because then you got Funko, who's definitely doing its own thing, and then McFarlane is somewhere in that in between gap where it's like it's bigger than the indie companies, not like much bigger, but it's not in the league of the billionaires. You know what I mean?
And the license they have is the same standard. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
No, I started to cut you off. I'm gonna make a bold statement. I'm gonna say Toy Biz in '89 did a better job of remaking Superpowers than McFarlane did this year.
Hot takes.
Yeah, it's but all that to say, no, go back by saying Spin Master's DC superhero line, the 3 3/4 inch line, is fantastic. It's deep, it's bright, it's colorful. The figures are $9. They're very playable. The kids love them. That to me, I think, in the last 10 years is the best kid toy line I've seen come out.
More than Fortnite.
More than Fortnite.
Okay. Just had to throw it out there because Fortnite's kind of the big one.
Fortnite figures are cool. The kids aren't buying them and playing Fortnite. They're just going on their PlayStation and playing Fortnite.
I bought the Havoc figure before Firefly was available for G.I. Joe Classified, right? Got a couple of extras and I sent one to Phil, right?
But you buying a Fortnite figure does not equate to kids buying a Fortnite figure and playing Fortnite.
It's completely different, like you said. Yeah.
Totally different thing, right? So, no, Spin Master, out the park. Great job. Also, go down just to like put another feather in their cap. The Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman movie. It's take it or leave it. It's pretty dark. It's pretty out there, and the character designs aren't super toyetic. But the toy line that Spin Masters released, they released a sweet Batmobile. They released a great Batcave playset. Basic figures. They released a police car, just a generic Gotham police car. So it was the first time in a long time I've seen a company double down like world building, and I was like, those guys are trying. Like they're really trying to bring a toy line back. And they were affordable. They weren't expensive.
Yeah. You've got me now thinking about, man, do we need to do a Batman topic on one of these streams? Because we got a lot of Batman fans, not just in the chat, but among our other friends as well, who Baylor, Keaton, where does Pattinson rank? Conroy, West, like there's so much we could talk about on just Batman topics. So yeah, getting my brain to spin a little bit here.
Getting the gears turning.
The gears are turning. Well, I mean, look, Were there any like takeaways here? Like, did your mind open up a little bit in terms of like what you're going to do next, either of you, or did this stream just sort of reinforce what you already knew?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing if there's room for vintage toys. Like I was getting some vintage GI Joes, like some Grail pieces here and there. But as far as like, like let me not talk about Bionic Six. If I could get Bionic Six on card, why not? Just being exposed to something like Manta Force, like looks amazing, right? So it's like I always love going on your show, Ken, and like learning more about this, about the feasibility of rescuing and rehabilitating, repairing vintage toys. Why not?
Well, you're going to be expanding your social media presence a bit too in the next little while, KJ.
Yes,
so,
yes.
We'll have to get you on once you have kind of built up your, because you're doing a lot of social media stuff right now, but you're going to do more.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely bring you back to pick a topic that you enjoy, but also pump that and say, okay, well, KJ's helped out this show at bringing a lot of insight that I didn't know, right? And Adam, you're welcome on anytime. I mean, you helped me out in the early days before I knew what StreamYard was. Like, remember we jumped on Skype and I couldn't get Skype working. And you're like, all right, Ken, click the link. Where? I don't see. It's in your. It should be in your email. Yeah, contacts. Okay, add me as a contact. Okay, click. Okay, now log in. Okay, no, your mic's not working. Remember that night about a year and a half ago, Adam? Right.
I do.
The painful technology.
It was a watershed moment for both of our channels, Ken.
Yeah, watershed technology moment.
It was like when the Power Rangers first formed the Megazord. That was what happened when our channels collaborated for the first time.
Ken suddenly goes Tyrannosaurus, and then all of a sudden he's on Adam's channel. It's like, hey Ken, how's it going? So sorry, I said a dinosaur name, and my kid's ears perked up. Right. Speaking of what kids are still into,
that was fun. I think when I think back to like when you're talking about like playable lines. Hey, this little Ken. Playable lines, and I think the Kenner Jurassic Park line was one of the last great toy lines where they just like really embraced everything they were. And it was a movie franchise, but it was definitely like a toy line first, and it was for the kids. I love Jurassic Park toy line just because it really was like this. It was kind of like after Star Wars was coming back out or in that era, and they were just like trying to be a toy line. And they lasted for a long time. That toy line was in stores for all 3 movies. They could just go. All right.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you're getting a bit into the '90s toys right there, but still, like that's
Kenner's last hurrah.
Yes, last big hurrah for Kenner. Now, one thing that I would be remiss, I know we touched on it a little bit here, and we talked offline a bit about it. Adam, Visionaries.
Oh yeah.
There's a line.
I'll show you something here, bud.
Good.
Knights of the Magical Light. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
May the light shine forever.
This guy's getting wrapped up for you today, buddy.
Oh, Taverko dropped off Kryvak. That's right. I paid him for Kryvak yesterday. I'm getting some stands off of Adam.
Boxing him up for you.
Yeah, how's the looseness of his O-ring? Because the O-rings change differently.
You want me to speed him and see how long he goes?
We'll save that for when it arrives in the mail, if I remember.
No, he's pretty tight, bud.
Okay, because like it's one of those lines that I think had a lot of potential, but I think it may have been a little bit beyond what the 5, 6, 7-year-old mind could really comprehend the way they talked.
I think it was perfect for the 5, 6-year-old mind. I think they loved
it.
Yeah,
really?
I remember being my friends and I playing Visionaries, all loving it, but the figures were just. I remember having a conversation when I bought my got my first. Didn't buy it. My mom bought it for me. My first Visionary figure was Azor, and being like, "Mom, can I get this?" And
Azor or Arzon?
Sorry, Arzon. Arzon.
I was like, did I miss a character?
He was saying like, "Oh, he's a little more expensive. Wouldn't you rather have 2 G.I. Joes?" Like I was given the option of 2 Joes or 1 Visionary, but because I had just seen the episode of the TV show and I loved it so much, I was like, "No, Visionary. This is it." But the figures were just because of the holograms. Each figure had 2 holograms in the figure. And they were expensive to make.
The staff.
Yeah, chest and the staff. They were just that much more expensive, and they just couldn't compete. And I think that was the downfall. They were too expensive. I think, kids seeing a hologram, that's incredible. It doesn't matter what they talk like.
It is, but they talked in a way that was not like simple language, right? The arrows turn, the swords rebel, may nothing pierce his mortal shell. Like was that Kryvak who said that, or was it no? It was the other guy. It was anyway. Whatever it was,
Yeah,
I think maybe Sindar said that. I can't remember. But either way, like between that and the fact that some could you really tell the characters apart easily? Like if you were just looking at them cosmetically, could you tell Sindar from Kryvak?
We discussed this on the last time I was on the show, Ken, and
We
G.I.
did.
Joe, the Real American Hero, first wave.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Super similar looking. Even they shared heads. Like Grunt's
They
head was
shared
on
heads.
Even
but
if they
the
had a
weapons-
mustache on the art, that didn't mean the figure had a mustache.
I know, Bazooka, but
And so
I mean,
Visionaries is such a different color scheme across the board. I think they're very easy to tell apart because it comes down to like, oh, this is the blue guys, the red guy. Like you can reduce it down to that level if you really want to, right?
yeah, you could, but like because their weapons were similar with the staff, whereas like at least with G.I. Joe, you know, Zap had the bazooka, Rock and Roll had the gunner thing. Scarlet and Snake Eyes were way different, and the villains were way different. That's the key thing, right? Whereas in these ones, the villains and the heroes were all dressed kind of the same, and you had to follow the storyline. Like, how could you tell Leoric was the leader by looking at him? You know, I know Optimus Prime is the leader. Right. Well, that's true. He's got a mustache, right? But I mean, I know He-Man is the leader. I know Optimus Prime is the leader. I know G.I. Joe's an ensemble cast.
Let me just do this for a second here, my friend. And I will show you, like, this is the Visionary lineup here.
Yep.
And so I think their color scheme is so different.
Oh, you've got Recon as well. You've got Recon. That's cool.
I do have a Recon. Look at that. Now, these are all my 3D glow-in-the-dark totems. I don't have the hologram totems for them. But I think it's a super colorful line. The figures are diverse and the faces all look different. So I think this is a great toy line that just I thought there's no reason it shouldn't have succeeded except for the price point in my mind.
Okay, fair enough. And you came at it from a different angle because when you display them all like that, you're like, no, Ken, the colors are there. They have more variation than the original 82 Joe. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, but I can't tell the good guy from the bad guys just by picking up the figure. And they're all kind of dressed the same. But
the good guys have gray chess pieces and the bad guys have gold chess pieces.
Subtle difference, though, for a 5-year-old Ken, you know, mind you. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but that see the beauty of the analytical, how we come at it from different angles here, right?
Yeah,
like you have a completely different theory as to how it didn't succeed from me.
And I'm not right. You're not wrong. It's just, or you're not like, it's just two different opinions of in two different ways to remember. But Visionaries should have gone on more. They did a great
Maybe
story.
they should have done a cost reduction, just holograms on the chest only, and not the staff. Yeah. Or
so the staff. I'm going to go on record. I know we're all vintage toy collectors here, and these are really awesome, and whatnot. These are weird for the figures to hold on to. It is so hard to get the figures to hold on to these staffs properly.
Well, that's why I had to get the stand off you, because the stand, you have a place for the staff to go, right? Like you're sending me specifically the exact number of stands for the exact number of figures that have staffs, even though I'm only getting even though I've only got like 2 Visionaries, right?
Yeah. So the stands that I designed up have a holder for the staff at the back.
Yeah. Let me bring up full screen on this one.
Yeah, this is real cool.
So you can display your figure here, and he's on his stand that looks like his chest piece. But the stand holds the staff because it's impossible to get this staff into this guy's hand and have him hold it. So this staff, I know it's for storytelling was important, but it's unnecessary for play. And so if they would have cost reduced that, got rid of it, I think we'd still have Visionaries on shelves today, in my mind.
Okay.
That was a downfall. So you nailed it. You nailed it, my friend.
Well, there you go. Right. Well, I mean, we're basically coming up on the 90-minute mark. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a question from the chat before we sign off here. Jordan from Canada asks if you could greenlight a project for any underrated franchise, be it a toy line, movie, theme park, video game. What would it be? KJ, you've got your hand up. Let's go.
Let's go right into it. Captain Power, and I'll make this really quick since we're about to end this. But this is like the perfect question because
we got a few minutes. So
there was a moment that the people behind Captain Power, I think, they were trying to do like a Phoenix Rising version of it. I can actually go into my slides real quick, just showing what it was. So the thing about Captain Power was it had a really high caliber presentation. It had costumes. The same people that did Masters of the Universe, the movie, were behind Captain Power.
They were.
So like the interaction with the holograms of shooting with the jets and whatnot. Let's see if I can go into the jets. You know, them shooting back, the figures ejecting. So I would love to bring Captain Power back and aged up, whether you do it in a series, whether you do it in a movie for Netflix or, I don't know, Paramount Plus, what have you. Like, you could do like a really cool, aged up, sophisticated version of Captain Power. You can just call it Soldiers of the Future, whatever. But you know, I would still go back and get those toys. I would be interested in seeing what redesigns they did, just like they redesigned the Vipers from Battlestar Galactica. I would love to see something like that. With CG, Captain Power was way ahead of its time, decades ahead of its time with the CG they were doing before Reboot, before Beast Wars, and everything else. These were some of the first CG characters you could see anywhere on a show or even on a movie. So yeah, I think there's a way. I would love to get an attempt at doing Captain Power in as a new hey, what's up, Jay? Pleasure to meet. As a new resurrected franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to kick the question over to Adam quickly about what franchise would you like to greenlight, but we'll say hi to Mega J first, and I get to introduce him to the boys here. If you want it to be Brett and not Anvil, you blame Adam. But I am the excellence of execution.
Man with a beard like that, Brett the Hitman Hart. You can't do it. He's clearly got the Anvil beard. It would be if I put him as Brett and you as Anvil, people would be. I would have all my subscribers would stop following me. It'd be banished off the internet. You don't give that man's beard to the Hitman.
Well, that's a great cover-up answer for the fact that you just gave the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, and the excellence of execution to the actual excellence of execution, best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, who can't do a sharpshooter to save his life.
Facial hair, and you were wearing glasses. That's what it comes down to.
All right, Jay, how's it going?
Who's that fat guy that you put on Anvil's face? I mean, like he's not appropriate enough. Whoever that guy is, you put on that on the Anvil's face there. How's it going, guys? Good to see you. I caught the stream. I thought you guys were doing great. Black Angus, good to see you, brother. Adam, what's going on? Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Always happy to jump on a stream.
Well, you might not be that far, you might not be that far apart geographically, so you could do your toy hunts together. Like, you're just north of Toronto, aren't you? Aren't you, Mega J?
I'm in Markham. Yeah,
Markham. So there you go. Right?
Are you seriously in Markham?
Yeah, I'm in Markham. Yeah.
Jay, I love your toy hunts, man. I don't film mine, but I definitely took a lot of cues. So.
Oh,
there you go. And sorry, where are you again, Adam? I know I've sent you stuff.
Albert.
Oh shoot, you're in Mount Albert. I used to visit Mount Albert all the time. My buddy used to live up there.
I should know your address, Adam. I just sent you a package. Like,
that's literally. I just take 48 all the way up, and I'm there.
Mega J could be in here like in 20 minutes. You could just be right here.
Yeah,
Mega J, get up.
That's what I always tell Ryan Dole from Toy Anxiety / Gotham City Tonight. And like, he could just drive south 10 minutes. I drive north 10 minutes. We'd meet each other, right? Yeah. So halfway.
Black Angus, you're on the ball. Captain Power is an underrated what's called property. I did a whole episode on it, actually. If you guys want to take a look at it, it's such but you know what, it was marketed wrong. It is an adult look at the future, and the networks did not know what to do with it, and there was so much opposition to it. It being a competitor to Nintendo. You know, a lot of people don't realize that they were trying to fight Nintendo tooth and nail. The interactive video game, the interactive gaming market and toy market was just so huge. They were Skylanders before Skylanders. You know what I mean? Like they were the and what were they called again? Amiibos? Weebos, whatever.
The Amiibos, HeroClix, what have you.
Yeah. And you know, it was great. The toys were amazing. The technology was freaking cool. You know what I mean? And it was not given their due. Jeffrey Goddard the director, directed Master of the Universe.
Gary Goddard.
Yeah, Gary Goddard. He directed Master of the Universe, my favorite movie my favorite kids movie of all time.
Yeah,
right.
And it didn't talk down to kids. That's the key. And I think there's something about the culture of sci-fi and fantasy. When you go back, you can go all the way back to even 100 years ago, the 20s, where it always had this counterculture vibe. It being mainstream is relatively new. Having movies like Avatar, Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame as the biggest movies of all time, that's a new thing. You go back to the day where it was relegated to comic books, Analog, Omni, 2000 AD, heavy metal, that kind of stuff. It was always in the corners. I got into fights because people would assault my fandom, my nerddom, basically. I remember a kid stomped on my Batman sketches. I loved Neil Adams, rest in peace. I love the architecture he brought to it. I had to fight this kid.
That's sacrilege,
brother.
That's sacrilege. You can't
so
do that.
Now the geeks have inherited the earth, and the young ones,
the geeks are now the cool guys. I always tell Mega J, the geeks are now the cool guys. That could almost be a stream. Are we cool now?
We survived. We survived.
That sounds like a very desperate stream. Are we cool yet?
Yeah, it does. That's true. That's true. That would show a lot of insecurity on my part if I actually made that stream. But if I run out of topics, and I've done it, we will jump the shark and just do that. No, he won't.
When the geeks are
Adam will keep me in check.
When the geeks are naming the outbreaks, you know we're in charge. I mean, Omicron. I mean that's Unicron right there, right?
Yeah.
Right. Unicron's coming for us, right? And now I think what's the latest?
XBB? That's just Mega Man EXE. That's all that is.
It's all there. It's all encompassing. It's crazy. Yeah. But no. Jeffrey Goddard was ahead of his time, and you know what? You could easily do a crossover with Terminator. I mean, it was set in a post-apocalyptic world, right?
Lord Dredd was Skynet, basically.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but if you're a Bubblegum Crisis fan, the Volcania is Genom's main tower. Like it's actually, if nobody knows what I'm talking about, look that up. Bubblegum Crisis from anime.
I was too young when I watched it, but yes.
Yeah, it's and you know what? It's such a shame. I have the Interceptor. I've got Pilot's ship. I've got what's it called? The other I can't remember what it was called, but
the Phantom Striker.
The Phantom Striker. Right. I had like most of the toys. Now you can get them about pennies at the dollar, but trying to find them when you're at a toy show, they're no longer pennies at the dollar. They're very expensive. It's stupid.
Yeah.
But great toy line if anybody wants to get into them. Believe it or not, the batteries in mine exploded. I just cleaned the contacts off. They still work.
Awesome.
I bought a Phantom Striker the other day. It needs some work, so it's going to be an upcoming episode where I fix it up. But the guy's like, I got some other Captain Power stuff. Do you want it as well? And so I got two of the Captain Power ships that I already have that were in worse wear. So there's a couple kids that my buddy's sons were looking at my toy collection and thought that ship was pretty cool. So I gave them to him, and it still works. They're sourcing out to find a TV that'll run the videos, so they can play with them. So, or see if we can find a tube TV and a VHS player.
one of the biggest shames of one of the biggest regrets, not regrets, but it's unfortunate parts of redigitizing old television shows is that the interactivity drops. I bought, as soon as it came out, I bought the DVD set of Captain Power.
Wow.
As soon as it came out, and the actual interactive portions, half the time they're black, half the time they're just these weird patterns, and they do not work. I've tried I've tried everything.
Yeah.
I still have my first original VHS. Actually, guys, if you look at my whole review of Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, you'll see I bring up both. They're all over the place right now. But
do they work off of YouTube? If you find the animated practice runs that they used to mail out, and if they're on YouTube, do they work?
Yeah, no, they won't.
Okay.
No, you need to have a tube TV for it to work.
The refresh rate is off, and because of the flicker pattern, right? It was added. It was created for television broadcast, right? That was the reason how they work, right?
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate. Have you guys talked about TV Ontario?
No,
you guys. Well, no one outside of the Canada. Actually, no one outside of Ontario would know what TV Ontario is, right?
TVO.
but we had some great cartoons on there. We had, and again, my channel was all about retro cartoons and retro toys way back, and I was just doing nothing but cartoon reviews. It's unfortunate that it doesn't get enough traction, but people don't remember these toys. But I wanted to archive these memories and get them there so people could remember them. If anybody's interested, you guys can learn about Dr. Snuggles. You guys can learn about Barba Papa. You guys can learn about Sesame Street. I mean, Sesame Street was amazing. You guys just mentioned today's special, the Polka Dot Door. These are amazing, TV Ontario cartoons that have come back and that have been in the day, and they're very wholesome. In terms of like their content. I think that's something missing from children's programming these days. I mean, sure you have Treehouse. We have Treehouse here in Canada, and you've got what's that? Bananas in Pajamas and
oh yes,
Dora the Explorer and Paw Patrol. But they just don't have the same charm, I think. But that's just me with rose-colored glasses. You know what I mean?
So there was also, I don't know if you were ever sick and stayed home from school, Jay, and then put on TV Ontario. Remember that show MathNet?
Oh, MathNet. Yeah, no, all the edutainment out there.
Yeah,
MathNet,
but it was like they would say, like, for those kids that are staying home from school, you're going to learn math anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was Captain Kangaroo. You know what I mean? There was
3, 2, 1 Contact.
Yeah, 3, 2, 1 Contact. Absolutely. All great edutainment programming, and very much so. And of course, the behemoth of them all, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Yes,
just an amazing edutainment for this day. Followed there by You Can't Do That on Television. So many great different television shows that have come and gone. But if anybody wants to take a trip down memory lane, definitely check out some of my older, very very old episodes. Yeah, I talk about a lot. I'll talk about Rocket Robin Hood. I don't know if anybody remembers what that is.
Love Rocket Robin Hood.
Right, Rocket Robin Hood.
Right there, you said it, and it came straight up.
There you
go.
It's Kismet. I don't know if anybody remembers the Adventures of Hercules. Right,
that was mentioned earlier in the chat. I think a few people brought it up. Yeah.
If you take a Bruce Timm era Justice League or Justice League Unlimited Superman figure, you can very easily make him into a screen perfect Hercules figure.
Well, Hercules was actually inspired by the I believe it was the 40s Superman cartoons.
Okay.
Right? By Max Fletcher. And he had. It's interesting that they had an effigy. They had. I think their whole intention was to make toys, so they actually had the ring, right, which has never been heard of in Greek mythology. He never needed a ring to gain his powers, but in the cartoon they needed some sort of gimmick, right? They needed a MacGuffin to actually have him lose from time to time, or have Newt and Pip, go find it, right? And it was interesting too because they also put in a lot of these wonderful puzzles on how to defeat the mask of Vulcan, right? Or Daedalus himself, right? So many great wonderful ideas for the show. So great stuff out there. If you guys ever want to look up any of these cartoons, definitely search them out on YouTube. And like I said, if anybody's interested at all, I just did some short synopsises, on my channel. Not to plug my channel, I'm just trying to add, some resources for you guys to take a look at these because there's so.
No, that's totally fine, Mega J. I mean, Lord knows I plug what I'm doing whenever I'm on your show, anyway, right? Like I like looking at my analytics. Like I jump into a Mega J chat before. And then I look at my subscription count after, and it always goes up just a tiny bit. So you've helped me out as well, just as much as these other gentlemen have. So if you want to plug your channel, your stuff, you have the floor. All three of you have the floor for that right now. We're in the open forum part of this.
Did you guys cover Force 5 at all? Like it's very regional. Like it is incredibly regional. Like we had it in Ontario, Canada, but very few people. Sorry, not very few. There are a lot of people out there who know what Force 5 is. Grandizer, what's it called? Space Cateers, Guy King, Vanguard Ace, and what's it called? Space Cateers. A lot of people don't know what those are because again, it's very regional. But if you guys ever hear those terms. Like I'm a giant robot fan. I'm a huge giant robot fan, and those 5 cartoons really did it for me back in the day. If anybody's interested in them, they're just incredible. You know, it's really some of the pinnacle of 70s and 60s and 70s anime and manga at the time. So, you know, great stuff when it finally hit here the airwaves here in Ontario. If anybody's interested in looking those up.
Awesome.
Growing up in Ontario, you're right. When you hit the regional stuff, it was you would like. I never saw an episode of Silverhawks ever air on Ontario television, or even when you saw the toys in stores. I was like, just unaware of it. And then you hear rumors, and you know, you'd see it catch an episode here or there. But it was such a it was just being broadcast at the time, and you're like, okay, I guess we're gonna catch that or not. Yeah. And so, like Jason the Wheel Warriors, K-Dog just brought up.
Right.
I wasn't even aware of that until like 10 years ago. It was just never
the theme song. Like if something's gonna rival M.A.S.K for best theme song, might be Jason the Wheeled Warriors, because Stan Bush's The Touch doesn't count as a cartoon theme song. It's a movie theme song. Otherwise, that takes the cake.
There's the CanCon area where we have to have X number of Canadian content on television, right? Yes. So that's when we got that like super awesome Tintin cartoon that nobody else got.
As a matter of fact, just for the Canadians here, you know, guys, anybody who is not aware of this, please write to your local, you know, member of parliament, and please write to everybody who you can to make them aware of Bill C-11. It really does threaten Canadian content on YouTube. We are all in danger of being drowned by what Adam just said, which is the requirement for Canadian content for YouTube creators. You know, a lot of us creators here are very concerned that you know, we might have to submit multiple you know, requests to be accredited as a Canadian creator. You know, after February, and it's unfortunately I
haven't heard about this yet.
You guys should definitely look it up.
What's going on? We have to, in order to be recommended in the feed, we need to submit.
No, it's not. Okay, so basically, Bill, like, I don't want to take over the stream too much. I really just wanted to give that shout out.
I would have asked you anyway, but yeah.
All right. Well, basically, if you guys aren't aware, Adam, Ken, Bill C-11 was introduced Bill. It was something like 43 or something like that 2 years ago, before the pandemic. It was introduced to give a, you know, more competitive advantage, a more competitive landscape for Canadian content to be forward facing in Canadian viewership. So essentially the Canadian government and, not surprisingly, Bell, you know, Rogers, you know, all these CBC. They put forward a motion to make it more competitive for Canadian content to be more visible on YouTube. So what that basically entails is that from now on, any Canadians watching YouTube will be subjected. Well, not subjected. Will be suggested. I didn't mean subjective. I'm trying not to be. Anyway, will be suggested more Canadian content, i.e. more stuff from the CBC, more stuff from Rogers, more stuff from all what most people call public television productions. But if for the smaller creators, although this is competition, although it's you know, supposedly open content for Canadian creators, we as independent creators are the ones who will suffer, because our content will be pushed down in favor of Canadian content. Okay. And YouTube has been YouTube has been very vocal in trying to help push that narrative that we need to speak out about this. So that's something that I wanted to bring up. As much as I appreciate what they're doing, the reality is that if it's not brought enough attention to it, a lot of people are going to start. And I've spoken about this. A whole bunch of different creators have spoken about this. I'm going to do an entire episode on it, but I do encourage everybody to take a look at Bill C-11 and really get some information on that. YouTube's very concerned about this, because if the Canadian government does actually get this passed, that means that the algorithm from YouTube will be thrown off completely in terms of Canadian the Canadian viewership.
We better keep things monitored. Damn it! I better Google this when we're done. So,
and there are a lot of laws. There are a lot of YouTube rules that you guys. I don't know if you guys are noticed, but in your first 8 seconds, do not do anything controversial.
Yes.
Don't show anything of violence. Don't swear at all in the first 8 seconds, because you will be.
I saw that part I saw from a Nick Nimmons update. So anyway, gentlemen, anything you want to? And first off, Mega J, thank you for all that. That was really helpful.
Yeah, I didn't want to take over the stream, but you know what?
No, but you're giving us something to think about. Is there anything else you wanted to plug? Talk about your next project. KJ, did you want to take the floor for a minute or so? And
just everyone check out Instagram.com/BlackGingus. There's always a lot of fun stuff, and we got things brewing in the background. Shout out to my people over at Toy Kind of Mood always, and any one of these gents on the panel right here, fantastic content. I feel honored, and frankly, I need to step my game up if I'm going to keep gunning on these shows with you guys. Goodness, you guys.
You've got the knowledge, buddy. You just use that as the platform, you know. So anyway, Adam, what's next for you?
I got a couple things in the works. My videos are always you plan them and then you got to do them, right? You got to like actually fix and restore the toys and actually make them, and it's got to work. But I got a big Dick Tracy project coming up, and I got a fun
Awesome.
Thundercats video coming up real quick. I think that'll be maybe Tuesday, the Thundercats video. So that'll be fun. But yeah, just we put out what we can when we can. And
you've got a Patreon. You got a Patreon you launched in the last couple of months too.
Yeah, we got a Patreon, and you know we've got a couple tiers there. Some people are supporting us, and that's great. It's you know, we just we're pretty laid back here at Go Figure. We just we love toys, we love fixing them, and we love hanging out with people that love toys as well.
Awesome. Mega J, I know you talked a bit about some of the back catalog stuff, but where are you going toy hunting next?
You know, honestly, and this is just out of necessity. Toy hunting has to take it's got to scale back quite a bit. You know, the prices of toys have just gone astronomical right now. It's cause and effect, right? I mean, like it's not anyone's fault, but you know, there's a lot of speculation out there that toy companies are taking advantage by incrementally increasing it, you know, without real propagation. I've just noticed that with adult collectible stuff. Mostly the kid stuff is going with the tide, but the adult collectible stuff, it's just like, you know, just ridiculous. I mean, we're already paying a premium as it is because of it being adult collectibles, but I'm always going to be doing my toy hunt, my Toys R Us blah blah blah. My Toys R Us hunts. I will always be doing that. Just even if I'm just catching and releasing. I mean, that happens a lot. You know, I basically put it back in the wild. Tell the group of my hunter group that that's here, and I just try to help people. That's really what it ends up being. We all have to help each other, guys. You know, as a community, it's very important. You can't hoard all this stuff. You can't buy it all. You just can't. It's not. It's about sharing. You know, let's be cool kids like we were in the playground, and that's where it is. I am going to, funnily enough, have to talk about the response video from Scott tonight, which makes no sense, but I will be making a mention of it tonight. But tonight's main feature.
Oh, the response video because he put up a video yesterday.
Unfortunately, yes.
And it's a troll. I hope you like Prussia. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and then he played 2 or 3 minutes of audio at the end. He put up a response to his MOTU is dying video, and basically just said, well, I might be wrong. And then he played like 3 minutes of music at the end, which I didn't realize how, maybe I missed something, but I didn't realize how it tied back to the rest of his video. Anyway,
So that's what I'm up to, and but that's going to be a smaller segment compared to the bigger reveal tonight, which is unboxing the Proton Pack, which arrived at my door today.
Yes, you showed me the photo of that. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's so crazy.
In a few days, I'll be putting up a 3 friendly collector tips video, kind of a different video where I sit in front of a camera and say, hey, everyone, would you like some collector tips? I've got 3 tips for you right now. And then I do a 1, 2, 3. I've never tried that kind of video before, but I had some fun making it because it was more just talking head on camera. There wasn't a lot of B-roll. There was a little less editing. So I'm giving that a shot. That might come out Thursday. I feel like But anyway, I haven't updated the description with everyone's links, but I will put KJ's Instagram. I did put the Toy Kind of Mood YouTube there. I'll update Mega J's. Adam, I threw yours on just as we were coming on live. But everyone, thank you to the panel for being here. Thank you everyone from the chat for being so supportive. And we'll be back next week. Not sure what the topic's going to be. I might be in a different room of the house because I have guests coming in. So I might be in a different room of the house for the next few weeks, but that's okay. All right, cool. Take care, and we'll see you again next time. Have a good one. Stay safe, and keep buying those toys.
You guys.